With this session update, I'm Shannon Lurkey. Governor Walz and officials addressed the media to call for more funding for the Disaster Assistance Contingency Account. Following the event, the governor took questions from the press on an array of topics. Here's that press conference.
Well, good morning, everyone, and welcome. We're here today. It's that time of year again to start thinking about the spring melt, the issues that can come up, and to talk about the state's Disaster Assistance Contingency Account. When we experience these across the state, Minnesota is there to help their neighbors, whether it be flooding in the Northwest, whether it be tornadoes, whether it be those instances that we can't predict will happen, but we know will happen, of being prepared. And I just want to say that at least right now there's yellow flashing lights. We know that it was an incredibly wet fall. You're going to hear from some folks in Norman County that continues to get hit by this. And I think, again, it would be irresponsible not to assume that we're going to have a pretty wet spring and the potential for flooding as it was last year. We basically got a perfect melt, and our friends down in Nebraska and Iowa ended up with some of the most devastating flooding they've seen in a century. And so we want to be prepared for that. I'd like to make note of this, and having Representative Pawlowski here, one of the really smart pieces of legislation over the last decade or so has been the creation of the Disaster Contingency Account. That has the ability for that money to be in the account, and when FEMA or someone comes in and our matching funds need to go to those local entities that have no capacity to be able to deal with this, we've been there, we've been able to move that money in a very timely manner, and what we've seen is recovery happen much faster. Once again, that account is depleted because of the number of emergencies we had last year. We're going to be asking in our supplemental budget, and Representative Pawlowski is putting it in, and we'll be discussing it next week, $30 million for this year, and that will help the contingency of those that have cost from last year when the cost of the emergencies went up, and then preparing us for this year. So this is smart policy. It makes good sense. Last year, it was one of the first handful of bills that I was able to sign into law as governor. We were done with it by April 1st. It would be my goal once again to ask us to do it by April 1st. The legislature is going to get an opportunity to hear this. This is one that has been incredibly bipartisan. It's working. You're going to hear from local officials who know that this is an absolute policy that makes a huge difference. So this is to let us know that we're preparing. State Emergency Manager you're going to hear from will have some of the basic preliminary information. We were discussing it'll probably be the first week of March where we will get some of the first official reports from the National Weather Service and from some of the flooding that will be coming. But those things are already starting to show up on the radar, and so this gets us a head start on that. With that, it's my pleasure to introduce the author and then the creator of the Disaster Contingency Account, Gene Pawlowski. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Governor Walz, and good morning, everyone. This is the second time in a year that we will be looking at replenishing the disaster assistance account. And I would say that it is not only an appropriation, that it is appropriate. These disasters have been coming at us since 2007. So we're looking at two chapters of law. The first is Chapter 12A, which was created in 2008 when we had the largest disaster in the history of the state in southeastern Minnesota. The total bill for the state at that time was $218 million to restore southeastern Minnesota. Subsequently, in 2014, the legislative auditor did a review of 12A, and he said because of the repetitive nature of these disasters, they don't all raise to the level of a presidential declaration. So 12B says the governor can declare a disaster, and then we created a special account. Because if you remember in 2007, it took us several weeks before the governor would call a special session. You can't wait weeks or days when we have a disaster. We have to get the aid to that area and to those people as quickly as possible. So 12B was created to have an account that when the governor declares a disaster, 13 agencies and the protocols are all in place. Some people call it a game book, to get the aid as quickly as we can to those areas that have been hit by a disaster that's been declared by either the governor or by the President of the United States. No local unit of government can sustain the amount of work and the amount of resources it takes once these disasters are hit. So we're here today, again, because we're going to have a hearing in my committee on Monday. We're going to review everything one more time, but I'm very hopeful that we can get this bill to the governor's desk, as we did last session, by April 1st or before, get it signed, and have that account in place. And I want to remind everyone that initially, when we're not in session, this is to avoid a special session. And remember, there is nothing special about a special session. Thank you. Oh, I'm sorry, I'm supposed to introduce Commissioner Kelly. Oops, sorry.
Morning, everybody. My name is Joe Kelly. I'm the Director of Homeland Security and Emergency Management with the Department of Public Safety. As Governor Walz mentioned last session, he signed 2 bills appropriating $30 million into the disaster contingency account. And as Representative Pawlowski said, that account was established in 2014, and it pays the non-federal share of a federal disaster. So when the president declares that a major disaster occurs in Minnesota, FEMA will reimburse local units of government for 75% of their eligible expenses. And in Minnesota, the state has pledged to pay the remaining 25% of the non-federal share. And the money for that comes out of this account. These funds, as Representative Pawlowski said, also provide financial relief to communities when an incident isn't big enough for the federal government to provide assistance. And for those instances, the governor has the authority to authorize up to 75% of those eligible costs paid by the state. So we kind of reverse roles with FEMA, and then the remaining is borne by the local units of government. I mentioned that we put $30 million, the legislature and the governor put $30 million in that account last year. And we had a lot of disaster activity in 2019. In fact, we have already committed the full $30 million that was appropriated last year. During 2019, Minnesota experienced 10 major disasters. 2 were severe enough that the President of the United States authorized disaster assistance through FEMA, and 8 other times the governor authorized disaster assistance for what we could carelessly call smaller events. So we've gone through all that money. In fact, the current projections are that we have a deficiency of about $2.7 million in that account with the expenses that we already have, our known obligations from those past events. So looking forward, it's obvious that if the state's going to continue to help communities following disasters, more money needs to be appropriated into that account. And knowing that that money is there, and you'll hear from a couple of my colleagues from the county level, knowing that money is there and they can count on it does a lot to help local communities. And I'm talking counties, townships, cities, tribal governments, build resilience so they can get through an event because they know they can count on that money. If I could make one more point, just because we are talking about floods, and floods are top of mind. A key to resilience for families and homeowners is to make sure that we have adequate insurance coverage on our home and on the contents of those homes. And with the flood forecasts the way they are, now is the time for all of us to renew our national flood insurance or to enroll in it if we're not using that to protect our property now. And it's important for people to remember, you go buy flood insurance, it has to be in effect for 30 days before you're fully covered. As the governor said, we're going to start getting flood forecasts in the next couple of weeks. Now is the time for people to buy flood insurance. The other thing we ask people to take a look at is their regular homeowners insurance to make sure they're covered for water backup and sewer backup. You really have to have both of those things if you're going to protect your home and its contents, your investment in your house from the damage that can be caused by floods and water. With that, I'm going to turn to Doug Berglund, my colleague from Washington County. Doug.
Thank you, Director. Good morning, everyone. If we could go back to 2014, Washington County was among the first counties to use the disaster contingency account. We had 7 cities involved in that state declaration. We were able to recover about $443,000. Again, in 2019, Washington County was a part of the presidential declaration. where we had 11 cities where we identified $1.1 million of critical infrastructure uninsured costs and damages. This disaster contingency account is critical to the resilience of our cities, enabling them to recover quickly. Washington County has 31 cities and townships, and almost 20% of those have less than 1,000 people in them. Although we're the 5th most populous county in the state, these funds are critical to us for these cities and towns to get back on their feet in an expedited fashion. Many of the cities in Washington County have leveraged the FEMA funds available for pre-disaster mitigation funding. Still, we are very vulnerable to these extreme events, and another reason why this funding is so critical for us. This afternoon, Washington County is facilitating an all-city meeting at the Government Center to discuss the flooding potential for this spring. At this meeting, we will discuss strategies for preparedness, response, and recovery. Knowing the indicators that we've seen so far, we can expect that this funding is going to be required again this year, possibly even more so than it was last year. So that's why we're asking for this funding, and it's going to be critical to the resiliency of our cities and towns. So with that, I will turn it over to Gary.
Thank you, Doug. And Governor Walz, thank you for having me here. And good morning, everyone. My name is Gary Johansson. I am Norman County's Emergency Manager, and I'm also President of the Association of Minnesota Emergency Managers, or AMEM. Norman County is situated in the northwest Minnesota and in the heart of the Red River Valley. In the past 5 years, Norman County has had 3 disaster declarations, 2 state declarations, both tornadoes and flooding, totaling over $200,000 in damages. 1 federal disaster declaration, a major flood in 2019, totaling $1.5 million in damages, including the loss of a bridge. During a state-declared disaster, the state reimburses 75% of the total public infrastructure damages back to our county. In Norman County, that included county and township roads. In a federal declared disaster, the state of Minnesota reimburses 25% of the total public infrastructure damages, again, covering the costs of rebuilding our county and township roads. The Association of Minnesota Emergency Managers, or AMEM, which I am a president, spans 87 counties, 11 tribal nations, and 4 cities of the first class. During the 2019 floods, 51 counties and 4 tribal governments were included in the federal disaster declaration. Having a healthy balance in the state's disaster assistance contingency account is critical as we rebuild our small communities and counties' public infrastructure after a disaster. I strongly support the governor's funding proposal to replenish the state's disaster assistance contingency account as both a county emergency manager and as president of AMEM. Thank you.
Thanks, Gary. Doug, Director Kelly, as you've heard me say this, and I think the facts bear this out, Minnesota's emergency management system is one of the best in the country. The folks that we have working for it are amazing. One is they're great people. 2 is they've had a lot of practice. The one thing is that I think is if I can stress today, thanking Representative Pawlowski, good governance should be proactive, not waiting till after this happens, not getting into a special session, not holding up the ability of counties to be able to recover. We've got a model here that when I go to the National Governors Association, other states ask about. They ask about this account. They ask about how we do it because it is the best practice on how to handle these. We did it last year with very little drama. We did it on time, as Representative Pawlowski said, by April 1st. We've got a lot of stuff to do this session that we will get into. I think this is one that I would ask, if we move this to the front of the queue, get this thing taken care of. The chair is going to hold that, I believe, next Monday to go back through this again, making sure people are comfortable with the accounting practices, how this is done, what the recoveries have looked like, and comments from the recipients of this aid to make sure that our legislators, as they should be, feel comfortable that we're managing this correctly. So it's good stuff. It gets us ready, and I would again echo Director Kelly. I'd be remiss if I did not, or order or get your flood insurance now. And Commissioner Harrington is here, and he will never let me leave a place. Get your real IDs, too, as quickly as you possibly can. I hear you, and I'm echoing that. So with that, we'll take any questions.
About errors by FEMA. It says they severely underestimated the cost of recovery and doubled their assessment. What happened there?
Yeah, and this is one where I'll have Director Kelly, if you want to add anything to this. We had Regional Director from Chicago, Joseph, out a week ago to ask about this. They came in at about $39 or $40 million. It ended up being about $79 million, which of course upped the state's share of this. They pledged to us to make sure that next time that they have adequate folks on the ground. The timing of this, to be able to spend the time necessary to be able to get it done. We were in contact with them at the time, and I think Director Kelly has, as I said, done this enough times and is an expert enough that there were some warning flags at the time that maybe they were underestimating what we were seeing coming out of the damage. It's not that unusual. This is not a perfect science. It is difficult to do this, but an error of that magnitude certainly puts pressure back on the state. But again, it's a contingency account. It's one that we know that this can happen. It happens with counties too. That's what the situation was there. So they assured us adequate folks on the ground, enough time to be able to get this done right, and I think stay in closer collaboration as it's being done.
I thought in October, Commissioner Franz transferred another $20 million into this account as part of the budget deal. A, did that happen, and B, is that gone as well?
Yes, that is the $30 million that we had. That's correct.
An additional $20 million was appropriated.
Right, we had 10 and then the 20 that came with it.
Oh, it came out of a transit account.
Correct.
Yeah, that's the worst way.
Yeah. So this year we're going to ask for it in the budget straight up in my account to make sure the $30 million on the front end.
Governor, is there someone who can give us some history of the size of this account? I know the balance varies, but does this jack up the average balance, Representative Pawlowski?
This started out at about $10 million when we first wanted the account in 2014. Then, because of the increased number of disasters, it has gradually grown, and now we're looking at 30, and I think you're going to hear on Monday in my committee when we take testimony, we'll be looking at a much larger number in the future. The repetitiveness of these disasters and the fact that we have to respond as quickly as possible will demand a bigger number in this account.
What's been the history of the number? What's the average through the year? What has come out of this account? Yeah.
I'm going to turn it over to the director for the exact number on the expenditures.
Yes, thanks for the question. Remembering this goes back to 2014 when it was established. There's been, to this point, about $80 million, and I think it's $82 million that have been transferred in, and just almost exactly that amount coming back out. If you could average it, it's now somewhere around $15 million a year, but you can then run into, because we're dealing with the weather, and you can run into a year like last year where we transferred $30 million. As Representative Pawlowski said, when it started, we thought $10 million would be just fine, but with the number of disasters that we've experienced, both federal and state, it's just not enough. Since the governor of Minnesota was given the authority to authorize disaster aid or disaster assistance absent federal aid, in other words, when FEMA is not involved, that authority has been used 40 times. So that's 40 separate disasters involving more than 100 counties and a dozen tribal governments that have benefited from that account that wouldn't have been there, and that's part of where the expenditures come from.
Representative Pawlowski indicated the number needs to be bigger. Do you have a feel, because you're kind of boots on the ground on this, where you'd like to have the average balance be? I know there's a lot of variation, but should it be 15, 20, 25?
Like we said, it's a difficult thing to put a number on. We will put a number on it for Representative Pawlowski. I think what we need to do is make sure that we have enough in there that we don't have to have this conversation once or twice a year in between sessions. So, they appropriated $30 million last year, 10 and then 20, as you pointed out, sir. Now we need 30. Maybe to get to the biennium, we may need more. So it's in that ballpark where it's approaching around $30 million a year in the last couple of years.
Can I ask?
I'm going to ask the director on Monday to tell us if we had an event the size of 2007 in southeastern Minnesota, That was in August. We would not be in session. And I'd stated earlier in this press conference, we delayed weeks getting aid to that area because of the delay of calling a special session. So he is going to give us a number on Monday, what we would need in that account to instantly try once the declarations are made to get the aid. The second one would be the Duluth event. That was about $68 million is my recollection. Again, that happened when we were not in session. So the plan of the meeting on Monday is to not only fill the account that we have now and make sure we have something in there, but to anticipate how big this is going to have to be if we get one of these large disasters. And we're not in session.
If I could, I would echo on this, dude. We were talking, Representative Pawlowski and I were talking earlier. This is one of the reasons why in our local jobs, the bonding projects, that we're really emphasizing water infrastructure projects and the hardening these things to be prepared for this. Again, you end up spending the money on the back end of it after disaster happened rather than dealing with on the front end. That was the exact argument for going down in the storm sewers of Minneapolis so that we don't have the manhole covers blowing the lids, or we have a blowout out of the side of a pipe to dealing with these. Now we're going to have to figure out how do you handle these incurring events. And again, I think it's pretty self-evident that climate's having a huge impact, but even if it's not, they're happening. And I think the legislature understands that. Anyone else?
Yeah, just a question. The issue of climate change, you're talking about the frequencies of these events, if you can kind of go into that as well. And then also, what exactly are your forecasters telling you for, you know, your county and other counties? I mean, are you anticipating that this is going to be worse than usual?
I'll let the director, and I certainly don't want to speak out of turn, as I would be, again, much like the budget, forecasting a forecast, but there are indicators. I think, as we heard Norman County, it's as wet as I ever saw this fall up there, and I think when you have a saturated ground, now there's certainly last year we saw the slow melt out. We missed the April rains that haven't been there for 10 years, that may be again. We have to anticipate. I think the thoughtfulness on this that the chairman's talking about is preparing for that to happen. Again, I'm going to make this is simply, they happen to the counties. I don't want to get distracted by the issue that I think is settled on climate, that they are happening. These weather events are different than climate, but when you have numerous weather events happening one after another, you start to develop a pattern which eventually becomes climate. One way or another, we are in a cycle now of heavier and wetter events. We're having more extreme weather happening, and it would be irresponsible not to prepare for them. And I think that's what a lot of this is talking about. We're in this cycle right now, and knock on wood, we hope that money would stay in there, that we don't have this. But as Representative Pawlowski said, this is where government, and I think, again, this is a model for the rest of the country. Other states that didn't have this really got hit by it. The ability for me as governor to be able to provide relief to these counties in a very timely manner is an amazing thing. We see the resiliency come back. But just like FEMA's asking about, mitigation is the key here, making sure that we can't continue to rebuild bridges that are in areas that continue to flood, much like floodplain maps show that. So, and as far as the original the forecasts, we're a little bit early on this, but I don't know, Director Kelly, we'll be gathering, like you said, in a couple of weeks. We're starting to see some indicators with the saturated soil and the amount of snowpack we have that we're preparing.
Governor, about 10 years ago, I spoke to the leader of the state's largest property insurance association, and he warned me that maybe about now, insurance companies were going to start denying property claims based on high wind, high rain events. Are we seeing that in this?
We saw it in Congress. I always dealt with this down in Florida, the winds issues. You remember when this came up. I think it becomes very difficult, and that's the checking your homeowner's insurance. We're starting to see climate's going to make a difference. You see it all over. It's interesting to me is that there's not much of a debate in Florida anymore, even with a very conservative governor who's leaning into this idea of climate change and mitigation, that it's happening. So I think so, and I think for
deny those claims based on
that, I do not know. I can't speak to that. But no, it's an interesting question. I think, you know, at time when they're when those folks put together their actuarial numbers, they certainly aren't going to take a loss every single year. And when they see these things happen, that's why I think as a state, for us to be on the front end, prepare for that makes good sense.
Representative Pawlowski, do you have a Senate sponsor for this yet?
At this point, I don't, but I'm confident that we will have one probably by Monday. So.
If I I can just ask, how much more quickly does the money, when it's in the state fund, go to the counties? And does it actually end up going to like a homeowner who gets flooded? How much more quickly can it be delivered?
I can turn that over to the director, but I want to say this. Unless we have 13 agencies in this state that are engaged in this, there is a protocol, a playbook that we have set up. They can't move until a disaster is declared and then funds are allocated. Remember, this does not pay for a disaster. This is a down payment on what the final bill for a disaster will be. And some things we have to pay up front for. Removal, for instance, of hazardous waste. In 2007, the entire sewer system of Rushford literally flooded the town. They had no sewer system at all. So that had to be removed. Well, we waited several weeks. What would you be like if you had sewer in your entire community for several weeks? That is not what we want to happen. We want to make sure that we're on the ground as quickly as possible and we're responding to these things.
Can we do one more? Special sessions do you think have been avoided because of this account?
I'd say a dozen or so. In the last special session that we had, which was 2013, and I have the document and I use it, the declaration was made. We have the governor signing it, not this one, and we have both Democrats and Republicans signing it. In the first paragraph, the word appropriation was misspelled 3 different ways. Now, that's the problem with the special session. If you can't spell appropriation, I don't think we should be allowed to do it. But it underscores this: when you act too fast, you make mistakes. We don't want mistakes made here. We want to make sure everybody understands what our responsibilities are, and we're going to help the people who have come in harm's way.
I want to make sure we have time for off-topic questions. Can we do one more on topic?
I would go back to that about moving the money. This is one of the things that maybe you could ask about this, Joe, because it's a good question. It really is a change of, as the representative said, if they're out of session. I declared some this summer where I'm able to, and my staff puts it in front of me, they draft up the declaration order, we draft it, and the money moves almost instantaneously. That would have taken months if we'd had to wait to come back or call the special session.
Thanks, Governor. I'm going to kind of answer the question backwards. I'll start with the question about homeowners. To be clear, the money that's in the disaster contingency account is for financial relief for local units of government. So that's what we call public assistance. That's for uninsured damage to public infrastructure and other emergency response costs like cleaning up debris and so forth. Money to homeowners typically comes from their insurance companies and, if not covered, from FEMA. And now with Chapter 12A, the legislature has given itself the authority to appropriate money. But this money out of this account is going to provide financial relief to local units of government. The question about the timing of payments is always interesting because it's a long answer, but suffice it to say that we have to be good stewards of public money. There's a lot of bureaucracy. There's a lot of paperwork. These are reimbursement programs, not grants up front. So that can take some time. What's important, though, is that with this account, we can instantly take money out of that account and set it aside in an allotment named for those communities that have been affected by an event. And they know that they're going to get that assistance when they're ready to receive those payments. They know that it's there. I think I've heard Representative Pawlowski say a couple of times, it's really important for both the local community leaders and the legislator and the governor to know that that's taken care of, that that money has been set aside for them. And to know that right up front has a lot to do with how these gentlemen and their communities approach recovery in the rebuilding of their communities, because they know that part will be there.
Mr. Director, may I, or this might be a question for the governor because he's been on the Washington, D.C. side of things. If Minnesota has a real nice, fat, or healthy, best practices, national model kind of account there, does it lessen the chances of FEMA providing federal money at some point, or lessen the chances of the president declaring
No, it's a good question, saying, well, you're already taking care of yourself, we can't have to do it. They still meet the guidelines, and what happens a lot of times is those guidelines, we don't hit those thresholds, so it just doesn't reach that level. But no, it does not. And I think one of the things is that I heard from Regional Director Joseph was the sense of trust they have in our folks with the numbers they're putting in, with the way they go about business. There's a real relationship with FEMA that's based on best practices too. But no, it doesn't impact us. Well, thank you all. I'll be glad to take some off-topic questions. Thanks, Gene. Good work. Yeah, let us know what you need. Thanks. Good to see you, Commissioner. Sure. Sure.
The majority leader of the Senate talked to him yesterday. He received a hint that they would be willing to go over $1 billion. He says certainly if water infrastructure or roads and bridges are part of this, his words, I believe, where my number goes up.
Yeah.
And he indicated that he had been talking to you and that other meetings were scheduled about possibly getting a bonding bill number earlier on in session. Can you?
Yeah, I feel good about this because I think, and again, I want to thank the majority leader and everybody involved in this. I think they're negotiating in real good faith right now, that it's good to have this discussion. I think one of the things that I'm glad to hear is that I think they're looking at the individual projects, that they're not caught just on the number. We have to understand what we have the capacity to do. We have to stay inside that fiscally responsible space. But I think that the arbitrary number that was maybe put out, I think they're going to see that some of these make a difference. So I'm very encouraged right now. I think most of the early session rhetoric is where it should be. We're talking about finding some solutions. Of course, there's some issues that'll get some political posturing, but that's healthy too. So at this point in time, I still feel good about this. I think the proposal we put together is solid. I think that now having a debate about those individual projects or the individual portions of the local jobs bill is really good. And there's time to do that. That's exactly what they should be doing, and I welcome it.
You saw yesterday the Senate Judiciary passed the bill to force your appointees to the Sentencing Guidelines Commission stand for Senate confirmation. I already know, I think that you oppose that, but I'd like to get you to respond to some other component of that. The folks are blaming Commissioner Snow for this whole thing, that it was brought forward, bad process, et cetera, et cetera. They're blaming him for it. I'm very angry about it. There's a suggestion that his confirmation may be endangered as a direct result of this whole debacle.
Well, that would be tragic. You've got a public servant that is respected far and wide, someone who's taking the hard work to actually look about public safety, someone who's been a champion of our corrections officers, making sure that they're afforded the safety and the pay that they deserve. That's just unfortunate. I don't have made it pretty clear that that sentencing commission has worked incredibly well because it's not politicized. And I think the idea of trying to throw it into that space, I get it that there's some folks over in the Senate that disagree with this position, but the vast majority of the research behind the ineffectiveness of long-term probationary periods has been pretty much rejected by every other state. The legislature and the Senate chose not to do anything about it, chose not to have a debate on it, chose not to have a bill, and they simply could not wait. So this was not Commissioner Snell's decision alone. It was a majority of a nonpartisan board that has functioned incredibly well. So this is looking for the problem that doesn't exist. And I have to say I take great offense of trying to make this personal about confirmations or whatever. Those types of threats have no place in corrections and protections of our correction officers and our facilities. So.
You would veto that bill if
but it's never going to happen, and they know that. I mean, that's just a way of bringing this up and the frustration. And I'm not sure, again, if they're playing poker and they want to do things, but playing poker with the career of an incredible public servant who is getting accolades from across the spectrum, that's simply not acceptable.
You better hurry with your supplemental budget because there's not going to be any money left in the surplus by the time the House and Senate get done with it. Have you looked at some of the things they proposed, $500 million for early childhood and scholarships,
certainly
climate change money, things like that?
And again, being an Article 1 person, they have the responsibility to do this, and I respect their right to go through and have the debates and talk about what we should do. At this point in time, this is a healthy place, but until things are down on paper, until those hard numbers are in, it's speculation. But again, I've said this oftentimes, budget documents are more than fiscal documents, they're moral documents. So this is an opportunity for folks to talk about what they value, talk about the things that they want to see. So at this point in time, I think all of these things, this is worthy conversation. This is a healthy part about what should happen. I have made it pretty clear where I see that number, where I see us making sure our rainy day funds are there, and then investing in education and children makes sense. But you're hearing this is clearly going to be $30 million in the supplemental budget that I will be asking for the disaster contingency account. So this is healthy space right now, and I'm glad that we're actually doing it.
There's going to be a rally later on marijuana for pro-legalization. Realistically, where do you think that's going to land this session?
Well, I think the Senate has said they're not interested in doing anything. I take them for their word on it. I said all along that what I wanted was I think we needed to have a statewide conversation. I certainly didn't want to rush into anything, but I also believe that the current system we have is not working. The prohibition is not working. The racial inequities in how the justice system deals with it is not working. We don't know what's out there in these things because it's not regulated. And certainly I hear some of the arguments, you know, around in drivers under the influence or whatever. Nobody's encouraging that to happen. It's happening right now. So I have made the case. What I said I would do is I would do the deep dive to make sure our agencies understood. And it's not easy. When you look at revenue, you look at banking, you look at Department of Health, you look at public safety. But to be prepared if the legislature is ready to move on something. So I think listening to the Senate, probably very little chance they're going to hear it at all.
Starting to look like we could have a repeat of last year's fight over HAVA funding. Senator Kiffmeyer wants provisional ballots. Do you agree to that?
I, for the life of me, can't wrap my mind around this. We're the only state in the country that does this. The HAVA money is absolutely clear. Our elections were interfered with. Protecting election security is foundational to the democracy. It's federal money that we can leverage. For about $1.5 million, we end up with about $7 million. It's needed now. And we're there again. So no, I'm not going to create a problem that is not there. And I refuse to turn away from what the experts tell us we need to do to harden our election system. Again, this thing polls like 95% amongst Minnesotans that they want us to protect the elections. It's our federal tax dollars. Again, we get very little back from the federal government. When we do, we should get it. And the experts are telling us this is what we need to do. So I'm going to say it again. This is absolutely should be the simplest thing we do. Approve this. Let's get our federal money. Let's allow the experts to make sure our election system is fair. So it's unfortunate that thing's back again.
Governor, you named this Grain Bin Safety Week.
Yeah.
Beyond a proclamation, what does the state need to do to protect farmers?
Yeah, and of course, many of you are tracking this and having growing up around a farm. This is always the biggest nightmare, and I'm telling you, these things happen out of nowhere. You've got a crusty thing on top. You step on them, or you're in the bottom with the dust, or you're stepping across an auger as it's going in. These are all things that all of us in agriculture know somebody who lost a leg or know somebody who lost their life in these. And because of the nature of we've got wetter product going in. We've got some of the issues that, for whatever reason, we're seeing an uptick in farm accidents, especially around grain bins. So yes, there are things we're going to do. I think much like we did with the rollover protections on the tractors, and we saw a reduction in rollover deaths and injuries, the Department of Agriculture is out working with stakeholders to see what we can do, and whether that is a way to vent these things or whether there's a way to make sure that safety harnesses are in place. I think there's a lot of talk happening amongst the stakeholders, the folks that are out there. This is being driven by mothers who've lost their sons in these accidents, who are coming to us and saying there's some things we can do. So the purpose of that was to highlight it now at the start of session, but there is work being done on specifics, and I think that will start to come up from the stakeholders to reduce these accidents, because they're ticking up.
Governor, a couple of insulin here, three actually. I think the House has got a couple. They're moving a bill forward. The Senate is moving a different bill forward. Do you see any?
Still hopeful. Yeah, I'm still hopeful. This is out in the public now. This is where it's supposed to be. We're still moving to reach that. I'm taking people at their word that they want to reach a compromise. I think we all know that the thing that'll break this logjam is basically a commitment by the manufacturers to toe a little bit of the line for us. Should that happen, I think there's every reason to believe there would be some ability to compromise and get this done. It's just too long. I mean, it's been basically a year. This thing should have been buttoned up in May of last year, and it is not. And we're still hearing reports daily of folks who don't have access to emergency insulin. But I think at this point in time, folks are still working in good faith. They're still moving. It's, again, what I've said is get this done. It's a priority for us. We're trying to put all the leverage we could to get this thing out in the open. Now that we're back in regular session, maybe they'll get it done.
Governor, the Lieutenant Governor will be highlighting housing tonight. I'm curious about the $276 million in bonding. What have you heard from legislators about their interest in that, and are there other housing-related bills you support?
Yeah, pretty positive, because I think the issue is that they understand, and they see this across the state, the housing issue is paramount. They understand that these projects don't get done without the housing infrastructure bonds. They understand that the government's piece of this, I mean, the legislatures get, this isn't us building housing, this is housing finance as a bank. We're part of the product that puts it together. I think there's a lot of open talk about how do we find some common grounds about local zoning and ordinances. How do we find some ability to maybe be flexible on what they're building, and also build some creative financing models? I think the good news around this is the business community is all in on housing. You know, I hear that when I go to the Chamber of Commerce. They get it. Businesses like Wells Fargo that are, yes, in the mortgage lending business, but also very interested in being key players in this affordable housing. As I get it, it's so interesting when I'm around the housing advocates. Commissioner Ho always talks about, we talk about affordable housing. She says, have you ever met anybody that went out to find unaffordable housing? Is there anybody on the spectrum that's looking for unaffordable housing? Of course, the answer is no. And I think how we talk about now housing, both from unsheltered homelessness to transitional housing to permanent home ownership, is much more sophisticated. So I think the word around that is pretty good. I think what you'll see is, much like last year when the bonding fell apart, we were able to move those housing infrastructure bonds, $60 million. Now, obviously, that's because you don't need the supermajority, and we were able to move it without Republican support on it, but that's not to say that they don't support it. So I think in a comprehensive bonding package, I think there'll be a healthy number. And again, I know that there are those that are requesting more. So thank you all. Appreciate it.
Thank you.